Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Home Podcast. Back off of Cougar football bye week. We survived a weekend, a pretty entertaining one, I would say, of college football without the Houston Cougars participating, and much needed, I think, for the health of this team bye week. Looking ahead to, I think, a pretty critical next several games here in the schedule as this team looks to build on and improve upon what it did a season ago. Plenty to talk about this opponent, the Oregon St Beavers. Got a little Cougar basketball stuff to talk about tonight as well. A little bit of official news for a season to come, a season that we're, of course, very, very excited about here, as well as a number of Cougar team about to start conference play, Cougar team that just began conference play with an emphatic win, which we're excited to talk about there as well, and a couple of our favorite country club sports with some fall results that we're going to chew on here at the end of the night as well. Bobby, how did you spend the Cougar football bye week outside of just doing your usual 9 to 5, which puts you at work on the weekend?
I just really enjoyed watching college football, right? Like, it's just kind of a fun thing to do. There were some good games, some entertaining games, some games that kind of came down to the last second. So it's always nice, these short weeks like we're getting this week with the game on Friday. We had the one with Dion versus Colorado. That was also on a Friday, if I recall. Why am I blanking all of a sudden?
It was in fact,
yes,
it was Friday,
yes,
2 weeks ago.
And then SFA being on Thursday. It's nice to kind of have your game wrapped up by Saturday, even though the stance of this podcast officially is all college football should be played on Saturday. It is nice to just not be stressed out on a Saturday.
I am kind of with you on that, in that I am someone, especially as I've become a boomer, increasingly pro just college football should be on Saturdays. College football, that's the day for college football. But it is nice to have the U of H game, watch that, and then just get to enjoy the slate with stress. Which, I mean, love it, love Cougar football, but there's at least some stress about the win or the loss. As a fan, because my never-ending home repair work continues, I decided this weekend took a little quick swing about 3.5-4 hours southeast of me to Flagstaff, Arizona, where it is not is one of the few places in the country that is not brutally hot right now, just absolutely gorgeous there, and saw number 17 Northern Arizona take on UIW. Cool old venue, the Walk Up Sky Dome, cool little town too. It was just nice to watch some in-person college football. I went and I've not gotten to see the Cougs in person this year yet, though we'll hope to remedy that before the end of the season. Just something really cool just about getting out there and watching college football. It is one of those hard to beat kind of things, and I was glad I got to do a little bit of that this weekend.
Yeah, man. It was it looked awesome from the pictures I got.
It was fun. Yeah, the game was decided by a touchdown. There was a Hail Mary. I was rooting for the home team, Northern Arizona, but I would have rathered a competitive game than Northern Arizona blowing out the opponent, and got a pretty competitive game. So yeah, it checked all the boxes. Did a little hiking. Really, really, really nice little drive, and nice little area of the country. Gonna mention real quick at the top, as we always do. Please, 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 if you want to support the work that Bobby and I do on a weekly basis and do not do so already, go to patreon.com/shpodcast. Get access to our weekly football react episodes. We'll be doing weekly men's basketball reacts during that season as well. If any of that sounds good, if the idea of supporting the internet's longest running Houston Cougar sports podcast sounds good to you, please, please, please go to patreon.com/shpodcast. Before Bobby and I give our thoughts on this week's football opponent, the Oregon State Beavers, we brought on someone who knows a bit more about the Beavs than you or I. A bit more might be some deliberate understating. Chances are that you, the person listening to it, probably need to know a little bit more about the Beavs as well. So let's get to know Friday's opponent a little bit better.
All right, we're very excited to welcome to the Scott and Holman podcast for the first time Anchie Machado, the owner of BeaverBlitz.com, covering Oregon State athletics in the 24/7 CBS Sports Network. Angie, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to help us and our listeners learn just a little bit more about Beavers football.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to join you guys.
So, it hasn't been the easiest start to the 2025 season for Oregon State, to put it mildly. What are the main things that have gone wrong so far that have led to the Beavers coming into this week with an 0-4 record?
Yeah, it's, first of all, you look at the schedule and it was not an easy schedule, especially the past 2 weeks. Oregon State traveled to Lubbock, Texas to take on Texas Tech, and then had Oregon this past week in Eugene. But before that, it was Cal and Fresno State at home. Oregon State fans were really looking at to trying to start the season 2-2. Oregon State just continually shot themselves in the foot. So I've never seen so many special teams blunders in my life, from snaps going over heads to missed assignments to stupid penalties. We've saw defensive breakdowns at inopportune times. We saw offensive breakdowns, a lack of real offensive identity. And a lot of that comes from the trenches. Offensive line has struggled some this year. Oregon State has kind of made its name as a run first team with a string of really talented running backs over the past 20 years. And this year, for whatever reason, they're really, really struggling to run the football.
All right, so with that being said, what would you say is the optimist case to be made, if you think you can make one, for Oregon State salvaging their season and building on any positives from the first 4 games, starting this week against Houston, and generally playing better football for the remaining 8 games?
Yeah, you look at offensively, Oregon State was really clicking against Fresno State. They were able to move the ball a lot through the air. Former Duke and Texas quarterback Malik Murphy is at the helm, and that guy has a strong arm. I don't know, you guys have seen him. He can sling it. So Oregon State has shown glimmers and glimpses of both strong defense, which Coach Bray is former defensive coordinator for the Beavers, and has shown that he can get that group, when they're firing. Offensively, it's been rough to find out what that identity is. But like I said, against Fresno State, they were able to pass the ball with relative efficiency. We've seen glimmers. If the Beavers, and then you look at the first quarter against Oregon, Oregon State was holding their own. It was 7-7 after the first quarter. They actually swarmed to the ball on defense. There were some parts there to like. And then, you come out of the second half down 21-7. You get the ball, go 3 and out. Your defense comes out, holds them to 3 and out. And then they misread a punt and let the punter run for 21 yards and first down, leads to a touchdown. So mental breakdowns has killed this team. But offensively, I think if they're able to, play the defense that we know that they can play, and then pick up the offense and quit shooting themselves in the foot, this team has a chance to, flip it around. 8 more games, can this team, win 6 of those? That's the big question.
So you mentioned Trent Bray, who is the Beavs head coach for, us U of H fans who are listening. He got the job after being a longtime OSU defensive assistant, including being the defensive coordinator in 2022 and 2023. And it's not unfair, in our opinion, to say that the Oregon State defenses have struggled in the first season in 4 games since he was promoted. How much of that can you attribute to the upheaval of losing the last head coach and the general Pac-12 collapse in the background? And how much of these struggles are genuinely concerning regardless of the background issues?
Yeah, what happened over the past 2 years, and this has been something we've been talking about on our message board too, because you have that subset of fans like, okay, we're done. Let's this whole experiment. Trent Bray was a star linebacker at Oregon State back in the early 2000s. His dad was the defensive coordinator with Dennis Erickson back when Oregon State had their big Fiesta Bowl run. So he has a long history with the Beavers. And then, like you said, he came back as a linebacker coach, and then promoted to defensive coordinator under Jonathan Smith, who then, as soon as the Pac-12 collapsed, Oregon State was actually having a great season that in 2023, on a roll. And then the night before Civil War, it all leaked out that he was leaving for Michigan State, and the wheels fell off the bus. So, and that's, last season was a rough one. Coach Bray has never been a head coach. He's defensive coordinator. So I think it was a big learning experience. So not only did Oregon State have kind of no conference, they're fighting the legal battle. They were fighting the legal battle there with Washington State, and trying to rebuild. They had to cobble together a schedule. You have a first-time head coach that tried to put together a coaching staff the best he could in a pretty short amount of time. and then trying to keep guys from bolting, which Oregon State lost a huge chunk of the roster after the 2023 season. So fast forward to 2024, Trent Bray is head coach only, brought in another former Beaver player, and Keith Hayward had a ton of experience all over the West Coast. And it just didn't look like a Coach Bray defense this offseason. And then defensively, you look at what happened last year. This is my 20th football season covering Oregon State football. Last season, when we started the year with our 22 two deep for defense, by midway through the season, 2/3 of the way through the season, 17 of those guys were injured or had missed significant time. I've never seen anything like that in my life where you had that many guys. I mean, they were throwing a true freshman offensive lineman over to help the defensive line. You had a tight end turned edge rusher. It was nuts. So off season, Trent Bray made some changes in that he wanted to take back the reins of the defense, be defensive coordinator, brought in longtime former head coach Rob Akey, who he's had a long time relationship with, to be an assistant to the head coach. So Rob kind of helps with some of the head coaching duties that, are off the field, and some of the things that when Trent has to do the defense, he's running. In Lubbock, I would say it didn't look anything like a Trent Bray defense. There was guys not running. The thing about a Coach Bray defense is it's going to be swagger. It's going to be everyone swarming to the ball, and it's going to be hitting hard. And we saw missed tackles. We saw guys jogging. We saw guys not even making an attempt to go, at that point, I wondered, did they lose the locker room already? What we saw against Oregon was the return of that defense. We saw the 11 men running to the ball. We saw good tackles. We saw, a lot of good, kind of that traditionally swagger, swashbuckling defense, I guess, is the best way. And then it just, they ran out of steam. The offense couldn't do anything. That second quarter, the second half, Oregon State offense held the ball for 7 minutes. Defense was on the field the entire second half. They just totally got gassed. So we're starting to see glimpses. Like I said, it's a hard thing. Is this team going to be able to put it all together? That's going to be the $1 million question.
So you mentioned, the Pac-12 collapse and your coach leaving. And let me tell you, Houston's one of the few fan bases that can relate to what you guys have gone through over the past couple of seasons, as University of Houston was left behind with the collapse of the Southwest Conference in the mid-90s. So how are Beavs fans generally feeling about competing in a very new look Pac-12 conference starting next athletic season?
Yeah, as a whole, I think there's some excitement. There's some disappointment as well, because the money is not going to be the same. The resources aren't going to be the same when you get left behind, when people vote for especially the Big 10, Big 12. So there's some questions about how Oregon State, when they're used to $25 to $30 million a year coming in from TV revenue, what that's going to look like in a new look Pac-12. Their Oregon State fans are, I will say, chippy. They're a little chippy. They do not want to play the Civil War anymore. They think that is just the craziest thing ever to play against a team with Oregon's resources, to go up and play that. But I think they're kind of now resolved the fact that there has been a conference that's been put together that's it's going to be a fun conference. When you look at the Boise State, you look at San Diego State, there's some fun teams. And basketball, you get St. Mary's, you get Gonzaga, add some hoops there. Baseball for Oregon State, baseball is a huge, huge draw. So that's going to be an interesting one. I know they've added Dallas Baptist as a baseball only school. So that'll be good. They need some better competition there, because Oregon State right now is trying to cobble off-season stuff or preseason stuff together in Surprise and down in Frisco and the like. But gymnastics is another one that, fans. So Oregon State fans, football pays the bills, and that's kind of where I focus. But, Oregon State, the fans have, women's basketball is pretty fun, has been pretty good. Gymnastics, baseball. So I think once they are able to see kind of the big picture of what all those sports do, football, it is what it is. I think you have to, as you guys would know with Houston, what they've gone through, there's certain things you can fix and there's certain things you can't. So you finally just have to embrace it and do the best you can with what you have.
So what would you say Oregon State has done institutionally, both the athletic department and the university at large, to kind of deal with that changing reality around the conference that they'll be competing in, and, the changes to the college sports landscape at large?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a big topic with Oregon State fans is is the athletic director doing enough? I know he's been fighting the fight, with Washington State as far as getting that conference rebuild. That was a big important piece, but what are they doing now? I think for too long, and this is something that gets, like I said, Oregon State fans are loyal to their women's basketball and their gymnastics, but for too long, Oregon State has tried to spread that piece of the money, the monetary pieces amongst all those sports. And at some level, they need to refocus and really dive into investing in football that will pay the bills for the rest of the sports. So there's some discussions in the lodge at Beaver Blitz about just how Oregon State's going to do that. They've been blowing through the quote war chest that they've had. And there's still some legal fees there as far as Mountain West wanting buyouts and some of whether that was contractually okay and legal for them to do. So it's either going to be I think it was like $150 to $200 million buyout versus a like $40 million buyout. So that is still in the legal battle right now. If they're able to get out with the 40, then you have Oregon State and Washington have a little extra. But I think right now it's just a matter of keeping your head above water. There's been some not huge staff reductions yet, but I mean the whole landscape in college football, college sports is something that I don't know if anybody can really keep a pulse on. And we could talk probably a day on the ramifications of NIL, transfer portal. At some level, I think you have to look at NIL, salary caps, revenue share, maybe some contract deals too, where guys aren't just jumping every year. You can't build, a team like Houston, Oregon State can't necessarily build a roster every year when they're trying to guess what they have and what they need to recruit to.
So in our last game preview episode, we had on a longtime Colorado beat writer and asked him about his experience on the Colorado beat in the pre-Deion Sanders days to now. Kind of a flip of that. What's been the differences you've noticed? You said you've been covering for 20 years. What's the difference you've noticed in media attention paid to the Beavers pre and post dramatic changes to the Pac-12?
Yeah, Oregon State has never been one that draws a huge media presence. Yes, they do when they're winning. I was at the game, like I said, in 2023. Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler were calling the Washington game, right? In November. That was big when you have those guys, and at the time Ben the dog was there, and that was a big deal. But Oregon State doesn't draw a huge media presence, so not a lot has changed. It depends. If they win, then you start seeing some of the national people just kind of pop up out of the woodwork. But it's pretty much your same beat writers, and you have the local Portland station, and then the TV guys will make it occasionally, but when Oregon's 40 miles down the road, they kind of get the lion's share of the information or the coverage.
Yeah, so back to Friday's game here. What do the Beavers have to do against the Cougars that they have not done consistently well in the previous 4 games to get their first win of the season?
Well, offensively, I'd like to see Oregon State be able to run the ball. Right now, Oregon State's only averaging 70 yards per game on the ground. So that's huge. And I think it comes down to the trenches on both sides of the ball against Houston. Houston's offense looks really, really good. Oregon State has had trouble in the past stopping a mobile quarterback. So that concerns me. They're going to have to try to, whether that's put a spy on him or keep him in check a little bit. But I think this comes down to the lines. If Oregon State's able to run the ball some, they will have some success. Defensively, like I said, keeping that quarterback. Oregon State has struggled to get any pressure on the quarterback. So, we've seen 3 sacks for Oregon State this season, defensive sacks. So, and 2 of those came against Texas Tech. 1 came against Oregon. So we need to see more pressure. And then going back to last year, Oregon State only had 7 sacks on the season. So this has been something that's been plaguing the Beavs. So I want to see some pressure on the quarterback, and then Oregon State will need to be able to run the ball.
All right, so we always close our interviews with a question that we try to ask everybody. And who is the Oregon State player or players that Sam and I may be overlooking in our efforts to kind of preview this team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys have talked a lot about Malik Murphy, quarterback. He's the guy. You probably talked a little bit about Trent Walker. He is, the top wide receiver. He's more of a possession guy, though. He'll be your top target, but he is more of a possession guy. Anthony Hankerson is running back one. He's a tough between the tackles guy. But with Oregon State really struggling to do any kind of power run game, keep your eye on a young man named Salahadin Allah. He's the second string running back. Great speed, great vision. So he also has really good hands. So look for him to come in off the bench. And defensively, keep your eyes on Nico Taylor and Skylar Thomas. Nico Taylor is an edge rusher. He's starting to really kind of starting in the last year, really kind of being a stalwart on that defensive front. And then Skylar Thomas I think he's a 3-time captain. So he's a safety. Another guy to keep an eye on is a new transfer from Florida State, Conrad Hussey. He just joined the team in the past week or week and a half, played in Oregon, played 6 snaps at Oregon, and had almost an interception. He was inches away from an interception. So Conrad Hussey is another one to keep an eye on.
All right, Angie. Well, that is all of our questions. Thank you so much for your time. And where can everyone listening kind of find the work that you do covering Oregon State athletics?
Yeah, I am at beaverblitz.com. We're part of the 24/7 Sports Network, a family of networks. I'm also on Twitter at Anchie Machado 1. So come follow and engage. I love talking sports.
You can't really mince words about OSU's season so far. It's been difficult, and frankly, I think U of H is a little fortunate to be getting this specific opponent off of a brutal stretch where they had to play Texas Tech and Oregon back-to-back, to varying degrees of top 25 opponent. I think this would have been a more difficult matchup if it had been immediately after week 2, say after the Cougars are coming off the win over Rice and OSU is coming off a loss to Fresno State, but a loss where they led going to the fourth quarter and probably felt like they should have won. That said, and I'll explain why as we talk about the Beavers further, I do believe they will specifically challenge the Cougs in ways that none of your first 3 opponents have done this season. Bobby, what have you gotten to learn about the Beavs?
Yeah, I mean, my first initial thought is kind of what you said. They're not a great football team. I don't think they are necessarily as bad as they might have looked versus, Oregon and Texas Tech. But I just don't think they're very good. Now that teams are 3-4 games in, you can move a little bit more into trusting SP Plus as a real idea of what is happening. A lot of preseason projections go into SP Plus, especially early on. Now that we're about a third of the way through the season, SP Plus gets a little bit more reliable based on information this year. They're using that. And so you kind of look at it, and this Oregon State team and their offense is ranked 99th in the country. The Colorado team that the Cougs shut down, just for reference, is ranked 49th. So I think there is still a little bit of preseason bias in the SP Plus, but I would definitely say this Colorado team is a better offense than this Oregon State team. This Oregon State team's averaging 70 yards per game on the ground. I got to be honest, Sam, we've done a really good job against teams on the ground. We played a Rice team that only likes to do that, and we did pretty good job there. And then you take a look at this Oregon State defense, and you see a ranking of 121. Not great there. I know you can't always look at SP Plus, but man, the Cougs should do well here. You look at the other 2 FBS defenses that the Cougs have played. You have Rice at number 70, Colorado at 66. So Oregon State at 121 is a big step back, maybe something closer to an SFA kind of defense here. It'll be better than SFA, so maybe you find something there. But you really look at this. The offense for the Cougs is the big question pretty much heading into every game. That being said, you've put up 35 plus points against Rice, against Rice in Colorado. You've put up 35 plus points. And those are better defenses according to SP Plus. You'd like to see the offense come out, maybe not start as slow as they did against those other 2 teams, but once you saw that offense kind of get going, you really saw this Cougar offense perform pretty well against better defenses. And then kind of going through their offense, you can see their quarterback, Malik Murphy. He's done a good job with the deep ball. That being said, I would say his best game is against Fresno State. That Fresno State defense is solid, right? So it could be a little bit of a concern, but looking again at SP Plus, the closest to us in defense is going to be Texas Tech. Tech is 22nd, we're 28th. And against Tech, we saw Murphy go 25 of 44 for 281. I think if you're concerned with the run game, Oregon State, like I said, hasn't really run the ball very well. They average 2.6 yards per carry, so they clearly want to run the ball, but they're just not doing it very effectively. The Cougs have looked really good on defense. This Oregon State team hasn't looked very good on defense. I think their quarterback had like 5 completions against Oregon. Now, granted, Oregon is like a different quality team than U of H is, but this really feels like a game that U of H should come out and kind of dominate.
There's something unrelated to Oregon State specifically when it comes to this game that gives me a lot of heartburn. Acknowledging this is a different Cougar team than last year, I think conservatively is still better in a lot of key areas than last year's Cougar team. You played 4 games last season that were either not in Texas or not in an adjoining state, so that knocks out the OU game in week 2. All 4 of those were double-digit losses, and I would say 3 of those 4, Cincy, Kansas, and Arizona, were some of this team's absolute just worst football performances. Some of the worst football you saw play in a season that unfortunately was not short and bad football. We'll say the season finale where you had nothing to play for against a good BYU team, good effort. Like I'm going to acknowledge that as the exception to the rule, but I remember watching the other 3 games from that group I just mentioned, especially Kansas and Arizona, and thinking to myself out loud as I watched it, I know we're not this bad over and over again as we were indeed on those days that bad. My point, I guess, being here, I just want to see a Willie Fritz coached U of H team do the thing here. I want to see them take care of business against a not great opponent on a long road trip before I get more confident about that kind of thing going forward. I don't think this is an especially hot take. Even with some of his struggles, Malik Murphy is a better quarterback than the last 3 that the Cougs have faced. Sam Vidlak, Chase Jenkins, and most recently, Ryan Staub. Cougar fans were actually some of the first people to see Murphy play meaningful game action. If you'll recall, he came in late in that game against the Horns in 2023 when Quinn Ewers went out hurt. We won't talk about anything that game any more than that, but acknowledging Cougar fans actually were some of the first to see him play meaningful college snaps. Murphy played for Duke last season where he was, I would say, neither great nor terrible. When the news came out, I thought it was kind of odd that Duke essentially told Murphy to go elsewhere to bring in Tulane's Darian Mensah, because it didn't feel like Duke was a quarterback away, although Mensah's, I think, done pretty decent for Duke so far. But Murphy's a big guy. He can move around the pocket a little, but isn't a runner by any stretch. You've actually seen OSU occasionally utilize sophomore Jabari Johnson as a running and short yardage quarterback, but you said it, Angie said it, running the ball has not been the Beavs' team forte in any aspect this season. I do think Murphy and his top pass catchers like Trent Walker, Taz Reddick, David Wells Jr., and Bryce Caulfield are more than enough to challenge this Cougar defense. The Beavs sack totals allowed are pretty high, but at least some of that you can blame on their offense having to be way more pass heavy because of being in deficits in games, just having a bad run game, some combination of that. And considering the pressure that Malik Murphy has on him, actually has decent numbers considering. You have to kind of squint at it, and it's still not great. He's still completing under 60% of his passes, but I think you could at least somewhat explain why that's the case. Can't really say anything nice about OSU's run game. You've already pointed it out. Fresno State's the only opponent where they rushed over 100 yards against. Cal, Texas Tech, and Oregon held OSU to well under 100 yards for the game. This is no shot at U of H to say Oregon and Texas Tech have more talented defensive fronts than the Cougars. Those programs spent more on those units than maybe U of H did on most of its roster. But I also don't believe whatever talent gap exists between U of H and those 2 teams I just mentioned, Tech and Oregon, is large enough that it will all of a sudden make the Beavers look like a good rushing attack on Friday, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the key for your defense. Make OSU as one-dimensional as all 4 of their previous opponents have mostly done this season. Bring the pressure on Murphy. know he'll sometimes be able to get his in the pass game and then take advantage of the mistakes that are created by pressure, like your defense has done pretty consistently through the previous 3 weeks. I don't have as much nice to say about Oregon State's defense, Bobby, so I will lead with the nice part. Their run defense is less terrible than their pass defense. I looked at it, I was like, is it good? I actually started doing my notes before the Oregon game, and Oregon ran for nearly 300 yards, and just like, I don't think we can do what Oregon's doing here offensively, but it's not nothing good here is happening defensively for the Beavs. And so we talked to Angie. I mean, their head coach is a defensive guy, former standout OSU defensive player, defensive assistant, was a good defensive coordinator under their previous head coach, and it just emphatically has not happened on that side of the ball since Trent Bray was promoted to head coach.
Yeah, the Beaver defense is just, there's no other way to say it. It's not good, man.
But also the last time he came on the show and I talked about a not very good defense of a former, I guess in this case it's still Pac-12, but former of the old Pac-12 teams, Arizona, and we saw the Cougars score 3 whole points against them in Tucson last November. I don't think this is not the same Cougar offense, and I actually think that Arizona team was probably not good as they were, probably better than this specific OSU team, but it goes back to what I said kind of at the top. I gotta see it. This game might be your biggest test offensively, not in the sense that OSU is an especially good defense, but this is your chance now. Okay, like prove it. You've had 3 varying degrees of pretty good games offensively. I would say the Colorado showed steady progress and was your best, most complete effort so far. Okay, can you do it on a road in a game where you're a significant favorite and you're going to be leaned on to do better? And that's the big test, not that OSU presents the same challenges that some of your tougher opponents do on paper. But if you're going to be meaningfully better than you were a season ago, Friday can't be a repeat of any of your previous road offensive no-shows.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, sometimes they call games like this get right games. You don't necessarily need to get right, but I will tell you right now, you definitely don't want to have a bad game here.
No doubt. Any additional thoughts on Oregon State and Friday night's game?
No, man. Just I'm hoping for a Cougar victory as usual.
Not really game specific. We talked about it a little with Angie, our guest. U of H fans certainly empathize with OSU fans. Our school went through the same thing as OSU did 30-something years ago when the SWC collapsed, and U of H ultimately had to spend most of the years in the interim competing in a lesser conference until we got the Big 12 invite 4 years ago and started actually playing in the Big 12 2 years ago. We'll say, considering what a dire situation the remaining 2 Pac-12 schools were in after that league collapsed, Oregon State and Wazoo, that new look Pac actually is a really strong hoops league. I didn't think about it until recently, but I mean, think about it, man, Gonzaga, and then basically the best of the best from the Mountain West. San Diego State, Boise, Utah State, Colorado State, like all 4 of them have had NCAA tournament teams in recent memory. And some like Gonzaga and San Diego State had teams in the Final Four. Like those, that's going to be a good hoops league. Like, I guess I wouldn't say unfortunate, because I think Oregon State fans just want to be in the best possible league going forward that they can be. Probably not when Oregon State men's basketball with its history can be super competitive against, but like a conference where I looked at it and was just like, oh yeah, this is going to create some like good 8 or 9 p.m. random college basketball that I'm going to watch tonight or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, Boise alone, I think, makes it at least a respectable football league.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Bobby, you ready to make some picks?
Let's go.
So it was an abbreviated week last week, a good 1-0 week for the both of us. We just picked a Big 12 related game this week. Bobby, you correctly took the Texas Tech Utah under 58.5 points. Those teams didn't even come close to that total. 44 in actuality in Salt Lake City. You absolutely nailed that one. Unfortunately for you, I took the BYU East Carolina under 50.5 points, which finished a bit closer than I would have liked to the total at 47. It was a good situation. I saw it was like at halftime, it was pretty low scoring. I was like, oh, that's good. And then 3 hours later, I remembered and like looked at the score. I was like, ooh, that hit, but that was a lot closer than I thought. Glad I didn't pay any attention to how it finished. BYU convincingly beating the Pirates 34-13. So Margin did not change between the two of us. I have a 95-75 lead for our season points total, but far from a commanding lead for yours truly. Back to our full slate of 2 UH game-related picks and 1 non-U of H Big 12 spread or total pick. Bobby, what are your picks for week 3?
All right, so for the game, I'm going to take the over 47.5. I don't think this Oregon State defense is that good, honestly. I could see the Cougs once again putting up 35, 36, somewhere in that range, and then giving up a touchdown and a field goal that kind of gets you pretty close to that number. If the Cougs can get to 35, I could see this being 35-14, something like that. And then for the
Team props.
Team props. Thank you. I knew props. I couldn't get the other word in there. Thanks, bud. Team props. I'm going to go Oregon State under 78.5 rush yards that we decided on. And then my final pick is our Big 12 game. And this wasn't my original pick, but with the news that came down today, I am taking Oklahoma State plus 20.5. You consistently see teams when their coach gets fired, it kind of rattles something and they go, oh man, we need to go out and play, and they play really well for a couple of games. I don't know why they are hosting Baylor, I believe. That just feels like a game where they kind of come out and they lose by 14 and it's close. At the end of the third quarter, they're down 3 or 7, something like that, and then they just kind of get beat and worn down. So I am going to go with Oak State plus 20.5.
I love when we organically go oppo on picks, because my first pick, I'm taking the game total under 47.5 points. I gave serious thought to the Cougs minus 13.5, and I think U of H will win this game, but I don't believe I'm in a place where I feel super confident picking the Cougs to win by at least 2 touchdowns on a long road trip. Hope I'm wrong on that, but I believe U of H will play ball control and offense and win a 27-13, 27-17 kind of game in Corvallis, hence my pick here. My second pick, the team prop pick, as you said, I'm taking the Cougar defense over 1.5 interceptions. I do believe Malik Murphy will have his moments throwing the ball on Friday night, will challenge the Cougs in the passing game in a way that none of your previous 3 quarterbacks have consistently. But I also believe the Cougar defense will be able to make Oregon State one-dimensional. Murphy will be in a situation like he's been previously this year where he's having to throw a bunch against the secondary that has been very, very good at taking the ball away here through the first 3 games. So Cougar defense over 1.5 interceptions for my team prop. And my final non-U of H Big 12 game pick, I am taking the Kansas Jayhawks minus 4.5 at home against Cincy. The Bearcats are almost certainly at least a little better than maybe you or I expected in the preseason. But Kansas is also on the heels of absolutely demolishing West Virginia at home. I don't believe this game will be a repeat of that blowout, because I think Cincy is a good deal better than West Virginia, but I could see this ultimately being a 7 to 10 point KU win. So going with the Jayhawks minus 4.5.
I like it.
Quickly shifting to Cougar men's basketball. Not a ton to add here, because we've already known and even discussed on the pod the specific Big 12 men's basketball opponents when the conference released the schedule matrix earlier this year. But today we did finally get official dates for these games. Actually, over the past couple days, you had the U of H release officially today, and kind of dates leaking out from various media people, whether it's Duarte or National College Basketball people, since Monday through today. So I won't read the entire Big 12 schedule on air, but here's some of the highlights if you'll allow me, Bobby. I realized that I did my notes. I'm like, you're doing a lot of the schedule here, buddy. But I did try and at least pare it down somewhat from the entirety of the games played. Your opener is January 3rd. It's a Saturday at Cincinnati. The following Tuesday is your home opener. We'll be hosting Texas Tech, with the Cougs hoping to avenge last year's lone home loss. Then the Cougs will travel to Waco the following Saturday to take on Baylor January 10th. 2 Saturdays later, we have the return trip to Lubbock against Tech on the 24th. Bobby, you get a DFW game this year. The Cougs will be going to TCU on January 28th. And speaking of games where one of the hosts will be in attendance, I will be at the Cougs road game at BYU on February 7th in Provo, and hopefully planning on, but maybe a little more tentatively, the following Tuesday, the 10th, at Utah as part of that Beehive State swing the Cougs are doing. Cougs will play the big Monday game on February 16th at Iowa State. Always a tough place to play. Then another game I plan on attending that Saturday, February 21st. I will be seeing the Cougs play Arizona with co-host emeritus Dustin. And the Cougs will then travel 2 days later to take on Kansas, another big Monday game, the 23rd in Lawrence. Your final home game is Baylor on March 4th. That's a Wednesday. And then the regular season finale is March 7th, a Saturday at Oklahoma State. Don't have a ton of original thoughts. Like I said, we kind of talked through our thoughts on who the Big 12 schedule makers did or didn't give the Cougs 2 matchups against. For the most part, I'm happy with that. Would have liked 2 head-to-heads against one of the 3 of BYU, Arizona, or Kansas instead of the one we got. But I also recognize doing a 16-team conference schedule where everyone has to play at least once isn't an easy task. No one is going to be 100% happy with what they get. So very exciting to think about how in 4 or 5 months' time, as much as we're excited about the present, Cougar football and the Cougar fall sports going on generally, Bobby, to think about a future that involves watching Houston Cougar men's basketball play Big 12 games. So what thoughts do you have, if any, on the schedule to come?
Yeah, just kind of real quick. You have a pretty brutal 9-day stretch where you are home versus K-State. Then you travel 2 days later to Iowa State. That's
Valentine's Day for K-State, and then 2 days later for Big Monday.
Yeah, that's tough, right? That 2-day kind of 2-day flip there. You do 3 a couple of times, but to go Saturday home, you got to travel to Iowa State. Then 5 days later, which is a decent amount of time, you go Arizona at home, which cool, you're home for 5 days. And then 2 days later, you are on the road at Kansas again. That's a tough 9-day stretch there. You play 2 road games in 9 days, and you're not just playing any easy road games. Like, you're playing at Iowa State and at Kansas, arguably 2 of the toughest road games in road environments that we have in this conference. So a little bit tough there from the Big 12 schedule makers, but it is what it is.
Yeah, there's not going to be very many scenarios where you in this conference end up with a schedule like, it's pretty easy. I don't foresee many tough stretches. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so our next topic is the only other team besides Cougar football that has started Big 12 play, which would be your Houston Cougar soccer program, which defeated Cincy 3-1 to open their conference season last Thursday at home. In the simplest terms, this was a 3-1 final that, if anything, kind of flattered Cincy for how uncompetitive this game was in the Cougs' favor. I know you're watching that one live with me, Bobby. What are your general takeaways from this opener?
Yeah, it's funny. The first line is watched most of the game versus Cincy. The 3-1 score is pretty indicative of the domination that this team showed, but it very well could have been
worse. That was my general. Yeah.
It could have been 4 or 5. But if you're just like looking at the score and you're like, oh, did U of H really outplay them that much? Yes, 3-1 is it. Cougs outshot the Bearcats 15-3 with on targets being 10-2. That's an insane number for a conference game. A conference game in which the team you played was picked ahead of you in the preseason poll. It was actually pretty funny. You mentioned how we were watching this game. We were texting during the game, and when the Cougs went up 2-0, we kind of both texted each other, and you were like, "Yeah, this is going to the smaller TV," and I was like, "Yeah, it's been."
Which, by the way, compliment.
Yes, it's a compliment. Yeah,
like I was so confident at 2-0 that this was a done deal.
Yeah, in fact, I probably looking back could have been pretty confident at 1-0. Just since he just never had the ball on their side of the field. I moved it to the iPad. You moved it to your smaller TV. The Cougs were absolutely dominating. It wasn't really needed to, I didn't need to watch much, after that 2-0 lead that the Cougs got.
I was pretty confident after 1-0. Like, I wasn't like insane because it's soccer. Like your opponent can get a random 1 goal against the run of play. Like, you want to have a multi-goal lead to truly feel secure. But given how well this team has played defensively in the season so far, and really just as much as the team's had any challenge, it's just been sometimes just getting that first goal, just getting that confidence attacking. It really does seem like once this team gets that first goal, they really get ahead of steam. They really get that downhill momentum. And I think for me, once I saw I got that first goal, I was like, okay, like this team probably has 1 more in them for this game. Like, I don't see them getting held there. And once it hit 2-0, I mean, at that point, this was, I was going to say, this was, I think, since he didn't get a shot on target until the second half in this one. That's how dominant the
I
Cougars
believe
were.
that is correct.
I had that later in my notes, but I was going back. My concerns coming in were how at the end of non-conference play, you had started to see this team maybe struggle at times to break down some inferior opponents. The best examples were SFA and UTRGV teams who were content to basically park the entire team behind the ball and challenge the Cougs to break them down, which they had struggled with at times. And Cincy, for any of their struggles this season, was mostly defensively solid in their non-conference schedule. And that was my main concern coming in, is that they would do something similar game plan wise, but maybe with a more talented roster than some of those non-conference teams I referenced a bit ago. And that just didn't happen on Thursday night. The Cougs did dominate possession like we expected, and you didn't break through for the first 30-ish minutes, but once Ava Shannon broke through in the 33rd minute, it felt like this incredible relief, because I'm not going to say the 1-0 lead felt insurmountable, but it felt like this team had at least another goal in them. Yeah, looked up, since he didn't have a single shot on or off target in the first half of this game, and I don't specifically have time to review the play-by-play of every previous Big 12 soccer contest that this team has played, but I'm confident this is the first time U of H has done that against a Big 12 opponent. And that's really cool, man. The Bearcats did finally, I looked it up, they did get a shot off in the first few minutes of the second half, but Cougs doubled their lead in the 60th minute on a point-blank finish from Samira Minor, finished with a really nice cross from Amanda Adams for her second assist of the 2025 season. Minor got her second of the game just under 12 minutes later out of a nice run by Cameron Maddox. Max took the ball from a Cincy player on the left wing, ran down to the end line, and inflicted a tidy little pass that Minor finished again from almost point blank. Neither of those are going to be the flashiest goals of Samira's career, but I remember earlier in this season, she had some very close misses. And as an attacking player, as a freshman playing your first season of college soccer, that kind of thing can get in your head. And so I'm glad for someone who I think can be a critical player for this team in the years to come, that she's gotten the confidence that you can only get from your first brace, which if you're not a big soccer head, that's your, and when a player scores multiple goals in a game. And the Bearcats did become the first team since the Longhorns on August 24th to score against the Cougars. Ben Williams actually mentioned it in his post game as an area where the team can get better finishing. So I guess a nice teachable moment, but can just say from a fan perspective that one Bearcats goal could not possibly have been less meaningful for how this game actually played out. This was an opponent that U of H should have expected to beat at home, but also this hasn't been a program the last few seasons where you take at home. You don't take any win for granted. The same Cincy team beat you by multiple goals in 2022 when both teams were competing as AAC programs. And then last season, they beat you 4-1 in Cincy. And I looked that one up. They were up 3-0 by the time UH got off on the board in that one. Similarly uncompetitive, but that time, unfortunately, from the Cougars' end, not that we needed this data point to see it and believe it between the two of us, but more evidence that this Cougar soccer team is leaps and bounds better under first-year head coach Ben Williams than they were under the last staff.
Yeah, you can really just see just the difference in quality. Just watching the games, you can just feel it and see it as you watch.
Yeah, it was kind of honestly, it was kind of a chore to watch this team the last few seasons. It was like it's not that just that you weren't very good, but also you weren't very good. It wasn't like an especially exciting. Like I've watched a decent amount, I would say, the last 20 years of soccer. I'm not an expert on it, but couldn't tell you what our style was. Couldn't tell you what those teams did well other than beat bad, overmatched non-conference opponents. I can tell you things this team does well. I can see a definite style of play. You can see a plan, even if you're someone who would call yourself somewhere between casual to semi-informed soccer fan.
Yep.
So up next, the Cougars will travel to Lubbock to take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, one of the consistently best Big 12 programs for the Lady Raiders home opener. I looked at the history. The history is pretty grim between these teams, Bobby. And I get it. The history is 3 seasons under the last staff, which we've established pretty well, just wasn't very good at getting results. The Raiders have won all 3 of these previous head-to-heads, all 3 of them, as I said, occurring under the last head coach, Jaime Frias. U of H lost all 3 by multiple goals and did not score a single goal in any of them. No less of a fearsome foe this year. The Raiders have a 7-1 overall record despite playing most of their non-conference games away from Lubbock and coming off a 1-0 win at a really good Baylor team in Waco last Thursday. Quick aside, at the risk of saying anything nice about Texas Tech, Bobby, I do admire that their athletic department, their money people aren't just turning the money cannon on football and men's basketball. They are doing that, to be clear, but they're also quite good in most of their Olympic sports offerings, and women's soccer is certainly no exception here. And it's not just a money thing here. Their head coach, Tom Stone, has been there almost 20 years, built them into a legit power. They also have one of my favorite ever U of H assistant coaches, friend of the pod and past guest, Blair Quinn, who is one of the better defensive goalkeeper coaches in college soccer. Was a big part, Quinn was, of building Cougar soccer into being a very good team by the end of Diego Bocanegra's tenure in Houston. This is the Cougs' first head-to-head of the season against anything close to a legit top 25 program. This, in the Red Raiders case, I would say within that. And I'm very curious how you look. I don't have unrealistic expectations because this is a very good opponent, but I have more hope now than I ever did under the last head coach.
Yeah, just to kind of add there, they are receiving votes in the top 25. The Cougs have, let's be honest, looked a little shaky on the road. Their finishing just isn't as good, and I don't know why that would be in women's college soccer. It's kind of a weird anomaly, so you get a little nervous about that one. I think a draw here is an incredible result for the Cougs, but this kind of feels like one of those games where first-year head coach, you kind of want to see him. You want a one-goal loss here isn't the end of the world. You feel pretty good. They received votes in the Big 12 preseason poll. So, like, if you can come away with a 1-0 or a 2-1 kind of result, I think you're kind of happy with that as a Cougar fan. That's progress over what we've seen in the past. But a draw here is kind of where I'm going, hey, that's a really, really good result.
Yeah, I don't think I'm even fixated on any specific thing happening. I just want to see him compete. I just want to see him compete a little more than they did under the previous head coach. And the Cougars will also be in action on Sunday afternoon, also away from home. The Cougars will travel up to Boulder to take on the Colorado Buffaloes. Don't have as much to say on them. They aren't as good as Tech, but still a challenging matchup. They only have one loss this season. They are unbeaten in the 7 games they've played in Boulder. They drew K-State 0-0 in the Big 12 opener, which gives me some hope the Cougars could get something from this match, though. You would imagine CU is going to be pretty challenging, playing them at elevation. Probably the most gettable opponent of this brutal 3-game run, which includes BYU next week that the Cougars are on, but still a situation where any result here is house money for Cougar soccer.
Yeah, man, I think that's kind of the big takeaway from all of the Cougar soccer this year is decent results, whether it's draw, wins, are pretty good for this program considering what we saw last year.
And we have 3 more Cougar volleyball matches to discuss from this past weekend. I don't want to overstate my level of concern. Still, in the broadest sense, a huge believer in Cougar volleyball, fan of the program, fan of your head coach, David Rare. But this weekend was the first result that gave me some concern about the 2025 team. And that comes from the 3-2 loss to Liberty last Friday. And what specifically concerned me is this felt like a 2024 result. The Cougars couldn't close a match up 2-1. You had drastically more service errors than your opponent. Liberty had 5, you had 12. And that margin right there, Bobby, is 7 points you basically gave away without your opponent having to do anything. I mean, over the years, I feel like we mostly have done football and basketball comparisons to help our listeners further understand the sport of volleyball. This, to me, feels like a baseball game where your pitching staff had 7 more free base runners, whether it's walks, hits by pitch, errors, than your opponent. I mean, in both the baseball hypothetical and this very real volleyball example, those kinds of giveaways against decent competition will always be punished. And Liberty's not a bad opponent, but if Cougar volleyball was going to be meaningfully better than last year's team, not a match you wanted to lose. Maybe a little hangover there from 3 very tough matches before this one. But I mean, given how tough Big 12 play is going to be, you can't not be ready for this. And you just, unfortunately, in the opener of this weekend at home against Liberty, just didn't look ready for it.
Yeah, man, I think that analogy of a 2024 result is right. You're kind of up 2-1. You'd like to see this closed out, and it just didn't happen. The Cougs actually out-hit and had half as many errors versus Liberty. Some I guess you could say some baddish luck there. A prime example of letting a team that you are probably better than just kind of hang around and pull the win over you.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't decide. I mean, they won the deciding 2 sets by 2 points, the absolute
Yep.
minimum you can win it by.
Yep.
But
And they
so,
both went. I believe they both went into extra
yep,
points. At
yeah,
least the
I think it
fifth
was
set did.
24-26. You lost set 4 and 14-16.
Yeah.
So it's close. I don't want to overstate, like say, oh, well, you got your butt kicked or anything like that. That's not what happened here. But you got to be able to close out. You got to be able to win these kind of fine margin matches. Like if you can't do it here against Liberty, I mean, it's about to get much, much, much tougher.
Mm-hmm.
And you won the other 2 matches this weekend, Saturday doubleheader with 3-0 wins over McNeese, Northern Alabama. But I mean, other than getting some younger bench players looks, I mean, I don't think you can really take away anything meaningful from those 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Up next, the Cougs will open Big 12 competition Wednesday evening, probably today or after, as if you're listening, at number 9 TCU. Horned Frogs are really good, as you would expect with that small number next to their name. 10-2 with their only losses this season coming against really good Pitt and UT Austin squads in true road matches at those opponents. And not to have too modest of expectations, I would just frankly like to see the Cougs take a set off TCU. I'd like to see them kind of finish what they looked like they were doing at times. And I think those were the really difficult weekend you had at Lexington. Like you looked in at least one of those sets against Kentucky and Purdue like you could have taken it. I'd like to see you just put some pressure on them and maybe finish off what were, promising efforts that maybe you saw against some opponents that ultimately you probably weren't going to be able to compete with over a full match.
Yeah, man, you want to go out and just kind of compete and just look good against this TCU team. Are you probably going to beat them? Probably not. But just someone for the Cougs to kind of look out for, Coug fans, if they do decide to catch this game. Evan Hendricks is TCU's leader in kills. The sophomore is hitting 195. Their other spectacular sophomore is Becca Kelly. I don't know if you noticed this while you were doing any research, but Evan Hendricks, their leading kill getter, is also second on the team in digs, man. When you're good, you're good. When you're a good volleyball player, you're good at it all, man.
It just reminded me, like that was Kenneth Sauer and Abby Jackson, man. Like when they were here, like it wasn't just that those 2 were big offensive contributors, but like you're truly high end players. They're giving you something defensively as well.
Yeah, and their 2 top players. One's a their 2 kill getters is like I said, Becca Kelly, redshirt sophomore, Evan Hendricks, true sophomore. TCU might be pretty good for the next couple of years, bud.
Yeah, I think honestly, I don't wish this specific ill will on TCU. I have no strong feelings, but at that point, you're almost just like, oh man, it's like Nebraska or Pitt or one of the volleyball powers going to be like, oh hey, because I mean, it happened to Purdue, like we saw it with Chloe Chacoin on Purdue. So yeah, I was gonna say, as a team wanting to kind of compete around them. I mean, I remember 2 years ago that really good Cougar volleyball season. TCU was a team that we beat, and now like they're one of the best in the country. Like this is such a brutal volleyball league. Like even the teams that were down for a little bit, like quite often don't stay down.
Yep.
And the Cougs will be back home at the Fertitta Center on Saturday at 1 p.m. hosting Texas Tech. The Lady Raiders are a much more gettable opponent. They are 8-4 on the season so far, but in those 4 losses, lost to Western Carolina, Northern Arizona, and the Cougs last year lost both their head-to-heads against this opponent. And those were 2 particular losses that stuck in my craw because for all of Tech's investment and success in women's sports, we just got done talking about a little earlier, volleyball hasn't really been one of their power sports. I remember, I think the first season we were in the Big 12, we won both the matches against them, and I don't think we dropped a set. And so it was pretty frustrating last season to not just see the Cougars lose those, but lose it, and you didn't really compete that close in either of them. So after what we both probably expect is going to be a tough match at TCU, this is a good opportunity to get the conference home slate started on a good note.
Yeah, kind of feels like a looking in the mirror situation here. Both teams have won some good games, lost a couple that they probably shouldn't. It's going to be a much better check of what this team is and where they are is versus the TCU game.
Fully agree. So it's been a while, Bobby, since I've gone to this place, but we're going to go to a peaceful, tranquil, quiet little place that we like to call Cougar Golf Corner.
All right. Well, the Cougs went to the Schooner Classic. Is that how you
Schooner.
say this? Schooner.
Schooner.
I never get it right. Somewhere host emeritus and his fiance
About to marry into an Oklahoma family
are absolutely losing their minds right now. Well, they played in that classic. Last year, the women's golf team won this event. Not as successful this year, Sam. The Cougs placed 8th. Kind of their first real test, but it's also the fall season, so kind of take some of these results for what they are. The Cougs should be fine. You played a lot of teams that you will see a lot throughout the year. It was kind of a Big 12 kind of, Sun Belty real kind of vibes in terms of the teams that played. You kind of look in your best player, Mosa Viniscal, didn't play well. You wouldn't expect her to play as poorly as she did in this tournament in the spring. You kind of ramp things up. She played a lot of golf in the summer, including the British Amateur. So you kind of getting your feet back wet. You move in. You're just kind of getting used to things again. You did get a solid performance from the rest of what I would probably assume is going to be your starting 5, and Ellen Yates, Natalie St. Germain, and Alexis Aldana showed up, played pretty well. You just didn't quite have that result that you needed from your 5th player there.
And I was gonna say, and I'm blanking on her name, the local
Maylin Kim.
Yeah, Maylin Kim didn't play in this event either, right?
So you didn't have one of, I'd say, your top 2 players playing in it. She also played a lot of golf this summer, if you were following that. So there's a little bit of a grain of salt to be taken with this result. You would have liked to see it a little bit better. You were kind of in that 3rd tier of teams out of probably 4 or 5. So you were closer to the good teams than you were the bad teams.
No doubt. And I think early season stuff, you celebrate the positive performances, but you also, it's a long way until like the most meaningful golf is going to be played in this coming season.
Yeah, exactly.
And last but not least, we have some Cougar tennis to talk about tonight. The team competed locally and has a big weekend coming up. So we will go over to Cougar Tennis Corner. We talked a little bit last episode about the opening fall event of the season in Corpus Christi. Didn't really have the level of competition to allow for significant takeaways beyond the fact that happy to see Lisa Morosova competing early in the fall after she suffered a season-ending injury in the spring 7-ish months ago. The Rice Invite, which was your local event this past weekend, definitely was an opportunity to see how the Cougs fared against a much higher level of competition than the opening weekend offered. And you got some really nice results. I mean, big picture, Cougs won a combined 4-0 in singles and doubles competition against the host Rice Owls on Friday, which is no small feat. Rice was an NCAA at-large team last year, beat the Cougars head-to-head 4-0 in the spring season. Lisa Morosova probably had the singles performance of the weekend. She defeated Francesca Magina, who was Rice's Court 3 singles player last spring. She was second on the Owls in singles wins. She won 6-4, 4-6, 6-4. And Magina might have been the toughest draw in the field, and that you were getting her in only your 3rd match of the fall season off a long injury layoff. That's high degree of difficulty stuff. And Lisa kicked butt in her only singles match of this weekend. Shems Doha Zegluli, who was one of your incoming veteran transfers, defeated Rice's spring singles wins leader from last spring, Natasha Selvaraj, who played on court 4 mostly for the Owls last spring. She won straight sets, 7-6, 6-1. Just like Lisa's Friday win, probably one of the toughest draws you could have gotten the entire field, and Shem definitely met the moment on Saturday. She won another 7-6, 6-1 straight sets win. This one was over Texas A&M freshman and decorated Swedish international Tulla Strömquist. In doubles, Sophie Schouten and Shem got 2 doubles wins on Friday, defeated pairings from SMU, which included a 5-star freshman and one of SMU's top singles players, and a pairing from Rice. And on Saturday, they defeated a pairing from A&M to finish off a 3-0 weekend. On South Main, Lisa and your other veteran transfer, Petya Drame, also got 2 doubles wins on Friday, defeating pairings from Rice and UTSA. That was your big pain point last spring, doubles. So getting some confidence there, figuring out your best pairings during the fall is going to be huge for this team. I actually connected with UH tennis head coach Kat Adamovich for her thoughts after these first 2 fall events and looking ahead to this coming weekend's Big 12 individual championships. Her general thoughts were the first 2 events gave us a really strong foundation to build on. We've had performances that showed the depth and potential of this group, and we've also identified areas where we can grow. That's exactly what the fall is about, gaining experience, testing ourselves, and learning what it takes to compete at the highest level. The progress in just 5 weeks has been exciting, and it's just great to think about where we can be by January. Specifically on the doubles performances, she said, Shem and Lisa have both put together very strong doubles performances the last 2 weekends. We really dominated in doubles this past weekend. Sophie and Shem, along with Petya and Lisa, stood out with their energy and execution. And about Lisa's early fall and looking ahead to Big 12 individuals, she said, for Lisa, this will also be her first big test since her season-ending injury last year. We've been easing her back into competition. This week should tell us a lot about where she is in her return. And finally, on her goals for Big 12 individuals, she said, looking ahead to the Big 12 individuals, our goal is to keep building on the hard work. We'd love to see a few players make deep runs and also get tested against the level of competition we'll face in the spring. It's all about raising our standard each week and continuing to grow as a team. So really appreciate Kat giving us her insights as head coach of this program on the early fall season so far. I'm interested and excited to see how the team rises to the challenge of Big 12 individuals in Waco. The event's a bit more like your typical pro tennis tournament. You either have singles athletes or doubles pairings advancing through a bracket, as opposed to college team tennis, which is head-to-head matchup between 2 teams where the teams get points based on individual or doubles results. And I expect this to be a good event, though you do have ITA All-Americans going at the same time, so your really high-end players are probably at ITA All-Americans right now, but there'll still be good players because it's a Big 12 event, and this is a very, very good tennis conference. I am crossing my fingers that they will have, I think I saw on the ITA website, they mentioned like having play site streams for it, and I'm just like, hope it's working. I would like to see how the Cougs compete finally visually as well. As much as I'm excited about hearing, I'd like to actually see this team compete on the court, and hope there will be some feeds for yours truly and other Cougar fans to watch. But that's what's been going on with Tennis Bobby. Any thoughts you have? And if you don't have them, or when you get done having them, take us home.
Yeah, man, I think it's just really exciting to just, again, this is something I've noticed with almost all of our programs in this season so far, is the floor has been raised and the ceilings are going up a little bit as well. So like now the floor isn't winning a match in the in a Big 12 play, right? You got that first win last year. Now it's like we think we can get multiple. Whereas last year it was like, if we get 1, maybe 2, we'll be really excited, you know? So I think seeing the floor raised from all the sports is really exciting, especially from tennis, because I know some of the upgrades Kat has brought to the team with the new court resurfacing, getting the streams of the players or of the matches. I think that was a big one for her as well, just for recruiting purposes, especially with it being as international as it is. She has a lot of international players whose people want to watch them play, which makes sense. So yeah, I think seeing where the tennis program is headed is really exciting.
No doubt.
And so that is it for this episode of the podcast. It has been a fun one, and we would love to hear your feedback. We thank you so much for sticking. We'll probably be right about an hour a little bit over an hour for
It's
this
hour and
episode.
7 minutes. I haven't edited this yet, but I'm guessing an hour and 7-ish minutes.
Yeah, somewhere in there. So thank you so much for sticking with us. We appreciate you guys so much. If you have any feedback for us, you can find us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at SH Podcast. And that is SHPAWDCAST because we are the podcast, like the Cougar. You guys get it. If you have sworn off Twitter, that's fine. You can go to Blue Sky. You can find us at podcast.bsky.social. And if you have sworn off all social media, you can find us on email at shpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to talk to you there. And if you really want us to pay attention to you, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/shpodcast. We love to hear from you there. $5 a month gets you all of our premium content that we do and that we are going to do. Anything in the past, including our off-season stuff that I think was pretty good. We'll probably do some cool stuff for basketball as well. So I think that is all. Sam, am I forgetting anything?
I don't think you are, buddy.
All right. Well, what do we always say, bud?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!